Your 10-year-old just brought home a B+ on their science project. Your neighbor's kid got an A. Your brain does this sick little calculation faster than a trading algorithm, and suddenly you're standing in your kitchen saying, "Why didn't you add more pictures like Emma did?" Welcome to the comparison trap, where every parenting instinct gets weaponized into a message that whispers, "You're not quite there yet." This script breaks down exactly how those little comparisons carve out a space in your kid's brain labeled insufficient, and what you can do instead. Because here's what's wild. You think you're motivating them. They think you're grading their existence. Number 1, the sibling benchmark. You say it without even thinking. Your brother was reading chapter books by your age. Or, your sister never had to be told twice about homework. You're not trying to wound anyone. You're trying to light a fire under their butt, using the most convenient comparison available: the human they share a bathroom with. You think it's motivational. Like, look, proof it's possible, because your DNA is basically identical, and you both eat the same depressing chicken nuggets. But what your kid hears is, "I'm keeping score between you two, and you're losing." Research from the University of Illinois found that sibling comparisons directly predict lower self-esteem and higher rivalry. Not just, oh, they bicker more, like actual documented damage to how they see themselves. Your kid starts performing for your approval instead of exploring who they are. They either become whoever you seem to like better in that moment, or they rage quit the whole family dynamic and become the opposite out of spite. The fix is stupid simple. Stop benchmarking humans against each other. If you need to address behavior, address the behavior. "I need you to start your homework without me reminding you" lands completely different than, "Why can't you be responsible like your sister?" One's a request, the other's a rejection with a sibling-shaped knife. And your kids can feel the difference in their nervous system. Number 2, the highlight reel ambush. You're scrolling Instagram and you see your college roommate's kid just got into a gifted program at age 7. You look over at your kid who's currently trying to convince you that a Pop-Tart counts as dinner. So you say, "You know, Melissa's daughter is already doing algebra. Maybe we should look into tutoring." You're not trying to shame them. You're trying to keep them competitive in a world that feels like a Hunger Games of transcripts. But your kid doesn't hear concern. They hear, "Other people's children are better advertisements for parenting than you are." Studies from Columbia University show that kids who are frequently compared to peers develop what's called contingent self-worth, where they only feel valuable when they're winning. The rest of the time, they're just collecting evidence of their inadequacy. This breeds kids who either become perfectionists who crack under pressure, or they just stop trying entirely because why compete in a race you're pre-losing? The move is to celebrate your kids' progress against their own baseline. "You're getting faster at math than you were last month" hits different than, "You're still slower than the kid I saw on Facebook." One builds intrinsic motivation, the other builds a permanent anxiety hamster wheel. Number 3, the achievement interrogation. Your kid mentions their friend got a solo in the school musical. Before you can stop yourself, you're asking, "Did you audition? Why didn't you get a part? Did you practice enough?" You're not interrogating them. You're trying to diagnose what went wrong so you can fix it for next time. Totally reasonable. Except your kid hears, your friend's success is proof of your failure. They didn't walk in comparing themselves to anyone. You installed that framework in real time. Now, every time a peer succeeds, your kid has to emotionally process it as their own deficit. Northwestern research on social comparison in children found that kids whose parents frequently compare them to peers show higher rates of anxiety and lower academic motivation, not higher. The thing you're doing to motivate them is actually draining the tank. Quick favor from Sticko before we move on. If this is hitting home, could you take 1 second to tap that subscribe button? Believe it or not, over 97% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. Anyway, the fix is to decouple other people's wins from your kid's worth. When they mention someone else's achievement, just say, "That's cool for them." Then redirect. What are you excited about right now? Let them define their own goals without turning every conversation into a performance review where they're the underperforming employee. Number 4, the invisible scoreboard. You don't even say it out loud anymore, but your kid watches your face when you hear about the neighbor's kid getting into the advanced class. They see the micro expression, the little flicker of disappointment or comparison. Kids are emotional ninjas. They read what you don't say louder than what you do. So even if you're biting your tongue, they feel the scoreboard. They know you're tallying them against everyone else. This creates a specific kind of exhausting. They're trying to manage your emotions about their lives while also living their lives. Stanford research on parental expectations shows that perceived parental disappointment is one of the strongest predictors of childhood anxiety. Not actual failure, perceived disappointment from you. Your kid doesn't need to bomb the test. They just need to sense you wish they were someone else. That's enough to corrode their self-concept from the inside. The long game consequence? They become people pleasers who shapeshift to match whoever's in the room because they never learned their own shape was acceptable. The fix is internal work, which sucks because you can't hack it with a script. You have to genuinely detach your ego from their performance. Celebrate who they are, not who they could be if they just tried harder or were more like someone else. Because the message you're sending isn't be better, it's be different. Number 5, the borrowed shame tactic. Your kid bombs a test. You say, "You know, I ran into Sarah's mom and she said Sarah got a 98. What happened with you?" You're using someone else's success as a mirror to reflect their failure, thinking maybe the shame will spark change. Like if they just see how far behind they are, they'll catch up. But shame is the worst motivator on earth. It just makes people hide. What your kid learns is, my struggles are embarrassing compared to other people's wins, so I better start lying or avoiding. Research from the University of Texas found that shame-based motivation actually decreases persistence and increases avoidance behaviors. Kids who feel ashamed of underperforming compared to peers are more likely to cheat, lie about grades, or just disengage entirely. You're not building work ethic, you're building a really good cover-up artist. They'll spend more energy managing your perception than actually improving. And they'll carry that into adulthood, where they'll be the person who can't admit mistakes because mistakes feel like existential failures. The fix is to ditch borrowed comparisons entirely. If your kid underperforms, talk about their performance. This grade doesn't match the effort I know you can give. What got hard? That's a coaching conversation. Sarah got a 98 and you got a 72 is just outsourcing your disappointment to a 12-year-old. Number 6, the future threat comparison. You say, if you don't start working harder, you're going to fall behind everyone else. You think you're giving them a reality check about a competitive world. But what they hear is, your value is determined by your rank in an invisible race you didn't sign up for. This teaches kids that worth is positional. You're either ahead or behind, winning or losing. There's no version where you're just okay being yourself. Cambridge research on academic pressure found that students who internalize competitive comparisons show higher burnout rates and lower creativity. They stop taking risks because risks might drop their ranking. They stop exploring interests that don't boost their resume. Everything becomes strategic instead of curious. You end up with a teenager who's optimized for college apps but has no idea who they actually are or what they actually want. They've spent so long trying to be better than everyone else that they never figured out how to just be themselves. The fix is reframing success as personal growth, not competitive rank. I want you to work harder because you're capable of more, not because you need to beat anyone. That shift matters. One creates internal drive. The other creates a lifelong anxiety disorder with a side of imposter syndrome. Number 7, the compliment contamination. This one's sneaky. You say, "You're so smart, just like your cousin Maya." Sounds positive, right? You're complimenting them, except you just tied their intelligence to someone else. Now their smartness isn't even theirs. It's on loan from Maya. If Maya's the standard, what happens when your kid struggles with something Maya wouldn't? Suddenly they're not just struggling. They're failing to be Maya. Psychology Today research shows that compliments tied to comparisons actually undermine self-esteem because they make the trait conditional. Your kid learns, I'm only good when I resemble someone you already approved of. The hidden message is, you're acceptable because you remind me of someone else, which is a brutal way to never feel seen as yourself. Long-term, this creates adults who constantly measure themselves against others and feel like frauds when they succeed, because the success doesn't feel like theirs. It feels borrowed. The fix is to make compliments absolute, not relative. "You're so smart" lands clean. "You're so smart," just like Maya, contaminates it. Let your kid own their traits without footnotes. Number 8. The backward motivation. You think comparison is motivational because it worked on you as a kid, or because you see other parents doing it, or because you genuinely don't know another way to communicate, "I want more for you." But motivation that comes from feeling less than is just anxiety with a productivity streak. It's not sustainable. Yale research found that extrinsic motivation, driven by social comparison, leads to short-term compliance, but long-term resentment and burnout. Your kid might work harder for a semester, but they're doing it to stop feeling inadequate, not because they care about the work. That's a ticking time bomb. Eventually, they'll either crack under the pressure, or they'll hit adulthood and realize they've been running a race they hate for a prize they don't want. The adults who call their parents regularly? Their parents didn't use comparison as currency. They felt liked, not ranked. The fix is to build motivation from curiosity, mastery, and autonomy, not from fear of falling behind. Ask, "What do you want to get better at?" instead of, "Why aren't you as good as them?" One question opens possibility. The other closes it. Number 9. What you're really teaching. Every comparison teaches the same lesson. Your worth is relative. You're only as good as your rank. You're only lovable when you're winning. This is the opposite of unconditional love, which is supposed to be the whole point of parenting. Unconditional doesn't mean you accept bad behavior. It means your love doesn't fluctuate based on performance. But comparison makes love feel conditional. Your kid learns, "I'm only enough when I'm better than someone else." That's a soul-crushing framework to carry into adulthood. The long-term consequence? Adults who can't celebrate other people's success without feeling threatened. Adults who can't rest because rest feels like falling behind. Adults who achieve everything and feel nothing because the goalpost keeps moving. You're not building resilience. You're building a nervous system that never feels safe. The fix is to separate your kids' worth from their achievements entirely. Love them loudly when they fail. Celebrate their character, their kindness, their weird sense of humor. Let them know they're enough, exactly as they are, and that growth is just icing, not the requirement for your affection. Number 10. The way forward. These comparisons sneak out because you love your kid, and you're terrified they'll get left behind in a world that feels ruthlessly competitive. That fear is valid, but the strategy is backfiring. Comparison doesn't build confidence. It builds a kid who spends their whole life looking sideways instead of forward. The fix starts with catching yourself mid-sentence. When you feel the urge to compare, pause. Ask yourself, what am I actually trying to say? Usually it's, "I see potential in you," or "I'm worried you're not trying your best." Say that instead, directly, without dragging someone else into it. Your kid doesn't need to be better than anyone. They need to feel secure enough to become themselves. That's the whole game. Raise a kid who knows their worth isn't up for debate, and they'll have the confidence to try hard things without the anxiety that they're performing for your approval. You're not grading them, you're guiding them, and they can feel the difference.